Great music, shameless self-promotion, free refills. America. It's actually kind of hard to describe your culture if you've lived in it your whole life and have nothing to contrast it with. Thank goodness for my next guest, who has spent a lot of time in India and the US and has agreed to do a cultural comparison between the two. Her father served in the Indian Army, allowing her and her family to live in various regions in India. There, she worked for over a decade with marginalized students in the rural mountain communities in the central Himalayan region. She came to the U.S. after winning a Ford Foundation International Fellowship and completed her master's degree at Ohio University in International Studies and her doctorate in education. Global cinema enthusiast, Himalayan trekker, fellow introvert, Rashmi Sharma. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So I would like to open with a confession, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay. I love the Netflix show India Matchmaking. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it, but I've read so many reviews about it. And to be very frank, every episode, according to my understanding, is spot on. Seriously. That's how matrimony goes in India, especially on Sundays, because all the newspapers, doesn't matter if it's a national newspaper or a regional newspaper, if it's in Hindi, English, or any other language, it will carry a matrimonial section. And parents who have marriageable age kids, they religiously go through that listing every week Sunday, and they'll try to figure out who's a good match. If you don't find good match, then you find a matchmaker.
Wow, I didn't know about the paper. Did your parents do that with you?
They still do it.
Well, that brings up an interesting first topic. Let's talk about marital and gender expectations in society, shall we?
Sure.
When you came to the U.S., was it, did you expect to meet so many women who are really unattached to the idea of matrimony?
Back in India, because of my work, I was associated with some females who chose not to get married. And my parents had big problem with that. And because of that, they asked me to change my job 2-3 times. Yeah. So it's not like a girl's education and her career is a priority. It's the priority for them because they want a girl in certain position where she is a marriageable person. So if I'm working or if I'm affiliated with feminist kind of women, then obviously I'm not a good girl to get married to. So there was one point of time my father was like, I like your work, but I seriously don't like the organization where you are working because you have too many feminist kind of females over there. So I had some friends like that back home. And then when I chose to come here, obviously it was a big issue with my parents. They were like, you're single, you can't move on your own, you're not supposed to do that. And I was like, I'm not asking, I'm just telling you that I'm leaving. And I came here, did my master's. I wasn't sure what I'm going to do after 2 years because I had the funding for 2 years, but I didn't know what will happen to me if I have to go back. Then obviously it will be a problem for my parents and things like that. But thankfully I got admission in the doctoral program and then I started working over here. So every time I go back, every 1 or 2 years when I have to get my visa renewed, it's always the same conversation. So what's going on? What's your plan? When are you settling down? I'm settled down. I have a job. No.
Right. I was just thinking that. You are settled.
Yeah, not for them. For them, career is like secondary part of their life, anyone's life. You are part of the community. You are part of the larger community, your own family, your ethnicity, your religion, your city, your wherever you are living. So being part of active member of that community requires you to get married because that way you can have kids. You make sure your community has a next generation to live for. So I'm not doing that. I chose not to do it. So obviously it's a problem.
So it's not just about love and happiness. It's about reproduction and building the community's stability for the future.
Yes. Indian marriage is mostly about that.
So that would make sense why wedding season is such a big deal.
Exactly. It's seriously, after US, India is number 2 on all the wedding-related market. It's a big industry.
Wow.
So in terms of economy, I'm talking in terms of money. US is number one, India is number two. Big fat Indian weddings.
A big fat, yeah, we need to make a movie about that, right?
Yeah, when I saw big fat Greek wedding, that's what I was like, I wonder why nobody has made a movie about Indian movie.
Oh, it's got to be coming. I
Yeah.
mean, now, Netflix has just made this special. And you know what I love about that special, the Indian matchmaking, is that they don't stop and explain what different things are. They use words that I don't know. I have it on closed captioning the whole time. I'm like, I will pause it and then like Google, well, what's the cultural significance of that? But I love that they don't stop to explain it. They put it in the hands of the viewer to figure it out. And it's also interesting, the whole matchmaking thing to me, because it does feel more like being set up, which is, I guess, maybe more of an American term compared to arranged, because arranged sounds forced or like you don't have consent, but it's how they show it on the show. It's not really that way. It's more like a suggestion.
These days, the modern version is like that. And arranged is not forced. It's arranged in terms of like people will look for if you have the same religion as the other person, if you have the right kind of ethnicity, because India is like, we have 29 states, but regional ethnicities are separate from that, and people tend to get married within their own ethnicity. That's very important. Then what kind of economic background do you have? So people tend to marry in the same kind of economic background families. So those things, expectations from the family, what kind of family background you have. And these days people do really look out for, like, if you have kids, just 1 or 2 kids, you do want to make sure that they are marrying in similar kind of family. You don't want to get them married in a family that has like 8 or 10 family members living in a joint family. So if you're a nuclear family, you tend to get married into nuclear families. So those kind of expectations are there. Those are the things that are arranged by the parents. And then they are like, oh, this is a suitable candidate. And if you want, you can go ahead and, meet them, talk to them.
Swipe right.
Yeah, it's like Tinder. It's like Tinder, but arranged by your parents.
Yep.
I don't know if you've heard about a book called A Suitable Boy.
No.
By Vikram Seth. It's the most epic book. It's 1,300 something pages. Exactly. And it's coming on Netflix. So in form of series. So you do want to watch it. And it talks about arranged marriages, like in context of during the partition of India. So the independence movement, then creation of India, and then a life right after that. So a girl going through that phase of from 1940s till 1950s, and how she got married. So it's 1,300 some pages, but there's a Netflix series coming for it. So.
Oh, well, I can't wait to watch it. That sounds awesome. Well, what about like LGBTQ community in India? What is that like?
It's pretty vibrant. It's pretty vibrant. And these days, seriously, people have so many options, and they have constitutional rights in many places. I had 1 or 2 friends back in 2010 when I left. It was very difficult for them to live, and they really had to hide their relationship. Not anymore. They are living together. They are following the constitutional rights that they have. Yes, it's still problematic society-wise, religion-wise. People don't accept it, but they do have some constitutional rights. They don't have right to get married, but they can live together.
So it's not, to be gay is not a crime in India?
There is some criminal aspect to it, but if you have a proper live-in relationship, that's fine. But if you are going for casual relationships, that can become problematic some of the time. So we are not there according to Indian Constitution, where we are giving them full rights.
Right.
And that's what our community is fighting for. So.
Wow. That's not the answer I expected at all. What about the role of astrology? That was something I was unaware of through watching the show. Is that just a prominent piece of the culture as it pertains to matchmaking, or is the role of astrology important in daily life as well?
So astrology, the moment you are born, Your time is like right now you have digital watches and everything, but back when like even hundreds of years ago, people would write it down very specifically, and they would make sure that you give the right date and time and everything to the priest of the family, and they'll create a horoscope. Have you heard that?
Yes.
Okay, so that horoscope is literally how you're going to live your life. So it's a combination of stars and planets and what kind of trajectory they have planned for you. And literally some of the time it's very, very accurate. Like you'll have an accident, or you'll go for study abroad, anything. So like my horoscope said that I'll go for higher education. It didn't specifically say where I would end up, but it did say. So the second part of the question, yes, it plays a big role on how your marriages are arranged, because it has happened. Some people that I know, that they plan to get married, and everything is settled, everything is fine, and the moment you reach to that threshold where families have to accept and move forward with the marriage arrangements, they realize the horoscope doesn't match. So they are told like, no, you can't get married.
That's crazy.
Seriously. So everything is arranged, everything is fine, everything is okay, but just because of that horoscope thing, people move in different directions.
Wow.
People decide not to get married just because of horoscope.
That's a major difference between how we treat a horoscope here in the U.S. I mean, I come from a pretty conservative Christian background, and we weren't even allowed to look at it. It was considered hocus pocus. So, but it is interesting. I'm fascinated, and I think it'd be so cool to have an astrologer, like talk to someone who's an astrologer and have them on the show and do, the sun and the moons and all. I would love that.
There are a lot of shows like that in India. So early morning, my mother would do that. She will watch like how your day is going to be according to your specific, like when you were born, or the first letter of your name, or according to your birth date, because Indian calendar is separate from the Western calendar. So there are 2-3 different type of horoscope every day. So my mother would religiously watch that. And for us also, it's these days you can use certain apps if you are really interested how your life is going to be.
That's so, I mean, it is really fascinating.
So you can draw your horoscope digitally these days.
Maybe I'll work on that. When you moved here, well, before you moved here, I guess, what did you already know about the U.S. and how right or how wrong was it when you moved here?
So I grew up watching a lot of American programs. Star World used to be my priority all the time. I used to watch all kind of shows. I still don't watch Bollywood movies. I don't like them.
No?
No, sorry.
Oh, I love Bollywood. I love
didn't
the
watch
Haya Haya song, from the 90s.
Yes.
I know I'm rabbit trailing, but just come along with me on my rabbit trail. One night, my husband and I were staying up really late. He loves to discover new music, and he discovered the song, and he was like, "Oh, I love this. What is this?" And he looked up the music video, and I kid you not, he probably be mad at me for sharing this with God and everyone, but we danced in the kitchen for quite some time to that song, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, they're on a train! That was the 90s. They're probably really dancing on a train. That's not CGI." We love that song. So
they did really dance on that train. The actor was Shah Rukh Khan. The film is Dil Se, and the song is Chaya Chaya.
Chaya Chaya.
It's by A.R. Rahman. A.R. Rahman is a very prominent musician. He has collaborated on many Oscar-winning movies, and he has worked on some Broadway shows also. So he's really like one of true Indian legends right now in terms of music. His music is really phenomenal. So yeah, so it wasn't CGI, and that train is actually the shooting was done in a hill station called Ooty. And that train is more than 100 years old. It was started by Britishers. And so it's called Toy Train. And it moves really slow. So it was easier for them to make arrangements for having a dance sequence on that train.
Oh my gosh, it was incredible.
So yeah, it's still like after, I think it's been 20 years. So it's still a big hit. Like there are a lot of American Idol kind of dance shows in India. Indian Idol and Dance India Dance or whatever. And they'll have one performance of that song always. So
Now I need to get some Indian Netflix so I can watch Indian Idol. Like, you've got my brain turning. I've got homework. I got to look up my astrology stuff. I've got Indian Idol I need to find. So I'm sorry. We can come back from my rabbit trail now. So back to what you were saying about you watch Star Wars and lots of American TV.
yeah, it's Star World. So we get a lot of Star World in India. And
Star World?
Star World. So
Okay.
Star World is actually the one that is kind of getting all CBS and NBC and all other ABC kind of programs sourced from here and repackaging it according to Indian audience. So I used to watch a lot of that. And that was my understanding of America. And Friends, obviously, I've watched it like so many times.
Really?
Seriously. And I used to seriously think like you can have that kind of independent life where you are living with, one or two friends and then whatever you are doing and you find, love across the hall.
This is awesome.
Seriously. So when I moved here, I was seriously very excited about that kind of living. Like I'll have roommates, I'm going to college, and obviously there's that big hallway and, people mingle freely across hallways and like there's no that the caste system or like any kind of social system or anything. Like you're free to, just mingle with anybody you want to. But sadly, that didn't happen because I was an international student. So, yes, you are living in specific housing communities, but it's with studies and all the other things that you're supposed to do, it's very difficult to have that kind of like, especially friends level of friendships. Because if I rewatch some of those episodes, I'm like, so what exactly is their work? What exactly are they doing? Because they are sitting in that coffee shop the whole time.
Exactly.
So we didn't have that kind of time to just go through like our life like that. So yeah.
So that was disappointing for you.
It was kind of disappointing. And then every place is not like New York. Yes, you have really cozy coffee shops, but you don't have that kind of like metros everywhere and population and sky high kind of buildings and stuff. So I lived in Athens, Ohio. It's beautiful place. Fall is seriously something that I really miss right now. But in terms of like large population and everything, those things are very, very different. Midwest is very different, and we don't see that in any kind of shows. We don't see that.
No, we definitely don't. What was it about American culture that you fell in love with the most?
The open society, the freedom. I can choose to work late at night. It's my choice. If I want to stay in my office till 12 o'clock, and if I'm working late, that's perfectly fine. If I'm not going to office, like right now I'm sitting over here, that's fine as long as my work is done. Like nobody is like watching over you. Back in India, I had a boss literally like 9 o'clock, where is she? And 5 o'clock, everybody should just disappear. Like nobody should be in the office. So that kind of doesn't leave much space for creativity. And then there's no social barrier to any kind of, like, if I want to talk to somebody, it's up to me to start a conversation, and that's about it. I don't have to worry about anything.
You're talking about no caste system.
Caste system also, and in terms of like talking to somebody from LGBT community. Back in India, like if I'm meeting a person from that community, and if we decide to go back to a restaurant or watch a movie or do some, any kind of friendly activity, if somebody sees me with that kind of person, a phone call will go back to my home. Seriously, that has happened so many times, like literally I'll be out of my fingers to tell you how many times somebody has called my home to tell my father that they saw me somewhere.
Oh, wow. See, those are not things I would have even
So over here, there's
considered.
nobody calling anybody.
No, you are
That
truly, that is really fascinating.
So my parents are very liberal. They are not conservative. It's not like they are going to mind as long as they know where I am and what time I'm going back home. That's perfectly fine with them. And usually they know what my friend circle is, people I'm talking to. I have friends everywhere. So they know that I'm a very serious person. I'm not like running around with boys or anything. but at times it will be like very like annoying that somebody saw you, didn't talk to you,
Right.
didn't make it obvious that they saw me. Like if you saw me, just come and say, oh yeah, hi or whatever. But they chose to call my father back
Right.
home that, yeah, we saw your daughter over there. Like, what's that to you?
Exactly. And it's funny that you bring that up because until I watched, I know I'm referring to this Netflix show a lot, but
It's okay.
until I watched it, I thought that was perhaps an expectation or a dynamic around females only. But as I watched the show, there's one poor bachelor in this show that his mom controls his life. So it doesn't seem to be completely affected by gender. It's different. I noticed, the men and the women were treated differently. But what you're talking about, how like someone called your dad, if, you had a brother and he hung out with someone that your parents potentially would not approve of, a phone call would still be happening, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's for sure. And parents do have a say, they do have a control over your life. In a good way, because they do want to make sure that you are not, wasting your time, you're studying properly, you're meeting the right people that you're supposed to. So in their own way, they try to do the best.
Yeah.
It can get, again, my family was very liberal because, again, my father was in army, so we traveled a lot. And again, we lived in so many different places, so many different ethnicities, different languages, different religions. We were exposed to everything from the very beginning. So it was for my parents for them to expect anything different from me when I was an adult. It would be, they just couldn't imagine a life for me like that. And then again, because we have had that long history in our family where we have served in army. So my father is a third generation army officer.
Oh, wow.
So he was exposed to this kind of life growing up, and then his father was. So they have had very different kind of life altogether. So obviously, they can't expect me to behave in a certain way where people's expectations are very, different and very narrow.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I know our time is inching to an end, but I have so many more questions. Can you tell me if there was something that you could import from India, whether it's an idea or an actual thing to have here in the United States, what part of Indian culture do you wish was more integrated into typical American culture?
I would say food.
Preach. Amen, sister. Bring on some Indian food. Yes.
Because seriously, I believe that Indian meal is more like a balanced meal. Your proteins, your vitamins, your carbohydrates, everything is very, very balanced. It's very nutritious, and you have the right combination of sweet, sour, bitter, and everything. So, and we do find Indian food over here. There are really some good restaurants, but I don't find authentic Indian meal that I'm used to at home. So that's one of the things that I seriously miss. And being a vegetarian, that's one of the things I was like, if something can be done over here, like seriously, the vegetarian people would love that.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of
Even just have access to the spices. I love to cook Indian food and all different kinds of Asian, Southeast Asian food. But I have to special order those spices because they are not at Publix.
There is an international market.
Is there?
Yes, W Street.
Oh, okay.
I'll send you the address.
Thank you. Man, I think I got more out of this chat than you got out of it. Are there any other contrasts between Indian and American culture that you want to highlight that are noteworthy?
We have talked about the song and dance, Bollywood films. Even though I don't watch them too much, I'm very picky about what I watch. So, but there is really good Indian cinema out there that's like not very well known over here. Criterion Collection has tried to bring some movies, Indian movies, especially black and white movies. So I was able to find them over here. So, and those are the movies that I'm not able to watch in India. So
Interesting.
yeah, so some of that connection should be, I think there's a possibility for that because Indian cinema is very vibrant. We have really good stories, but again, it's limited to certain type of audience, and there's a very big need that where we can collaborate and good movies can happen still.
Right. I had no idea that the Indian cinema was such a big outside of Bollywood. Like I just didn't even think of that. So I'll have to. Yeah, I need a list of things to do after this. I'm so excited.
I'll send you the list of some good Indian movies.
Since you are the movie lover.
Seriously.
That makes sense. Well, as we wrap up, if there was anybody listening who wants to scratch their curiosity as it speaks to like Indian culture and learning more, what's a great way for them to begin to expose themselves to different aspects of Indian culture and Indian way of life?
The Netflix show is a good
It's
place
a good
to
start.
start. There's some Indian comedians also over here. I would be remiss
Akash, do you like him?
Yes.
I do too.
There are a couple of them. Hassan Minaj is there. He makes a lot of jokes about arranged marriages. Then I'm forgetting one or two names. But seriously, there are people who have who can give you some insight into Indian culture, being an American, how it is to live with those same values. Mindy Kaling is the one person that is. So she has had a lot of conversation about living in a household where you are expected to behave in certain way, cultural values and stuff, and then translating it to the US audience. So they have done a good job with that.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So yeah, so there is that, and then I think Indian culture in its way has tried to share. A lot of people have like Beatles were there in India.
Oh, right.
And so they kind of made Indian culture a global phenomena. So there is that need again of pop culture, bringing some of those cultural values in a way that it's positive. It doesn't go into a negative direction.
Yeah, a negative or a stereotypical
Exactly.
direction.
Yeah. So the cultural exchange has to happen in many different directions. It's not. So we have a lot of like doctors and scientists. So Silicon Valley. So there's actually a show called Silicon Valley, and they had made a lot of puns about Indian culture. So those kind of things are helpful to understand the Indian culture. Again, don't go with the stereotypical approach because again, it's 1.3 billion people, 29 states. We have 19 state languages, and lot of thousands of dialects. So it's really rich culture, really vibrant culture. So just because one or two Indians, it's just like tip of an iceberg kind of thing that So every Indian will be like, depending on what kind of background they have, which state they have, religion again. So you try to meet as many Indians as possible. Just don't make your opinion about India based on one Indian that you have met.
That's solid advice. I think that's the perfect place to wrap up. Thank you so much for sharing. I enjoyed this so much, and I hope that other people did too, and that they do follow the rabbit hole.
All right. I hope too.
That's a wrap. Nice job.
Thank you.